think this is some glamorous coastal paradise. Nope, it's actually a massive natural prison holding an entire country hostage. Look at the map of Brazil, and you'll notice something bizarre. Almost the entire population is crammed along the coastline. Everyone blames the endless Amazon rainforest. But the truth is way more brutal. A colossal wall of rock, hard as steel, is choking this nation. Can you believe a cliff actually dictated a country's destiny? The coastal vegetation is incredibly lush. What happens when it's so lush? It becomes a wild, impenetrably winding rivers trapped in deadly swamps. Nature isn't rolling out the welcome mat here. It built a ruthless geographical fortress. Let's look over at the US to see the difference. Thanks to an expansive east coast, flat plains, and fertile soil long before hitting the Appalachians, they expanded with ease. That right there is geography playing favorites. Those calm, barrier-free coastlines nurtured massive urban sprawl, paving the way for a superpower and shaping a booming New York City. Back to the Brazilian coast, explorer ships sailed in, carrying dreams of conquering a new continent. But the moment their bows hit the shore, they realized they'd crashed into a locked door. The towering cliffs basically laughed in their faces.
Soft wind sounds.
The Serra do Mar mountain range is like a gigantic blade dropping straight from the sky into the ocean. Below, just a pathetic, narrow strip of sand clinging to the water. Wanna back up? Your heels are in the ocean. Wanna move forward? The jagged cliffs are ready to crush your ambitions. These vertical drops rendered even horse-drawn carriages useless. Humans were totally trapped, stuck between a rock and a hard place on the very land they just discovered. But the nightmare wasn't over. Warm ocean winds hit the cliffs, creating a perpetual blanket of thick fog. The jungle grew insanely dense, a tangled mess of vines. Walking through here, yeah, it was like a stroll through a green hell. Put yourself in the shoes of those early explorers. You spot land, happily drop anchor, only to be crushed by despair when nature blocks every exit off the white sand. What exactly was hiding in that deep inland that Mother Nature had to protect it with an iron fist? Trapped between the ocean and a wall of rock, the explorers' thirst for wealth boiled over into bitter arguments. Was there any escape from this suffocating cage? But reality is cruel, and the cliff blocked every line of sight. With no way back, they had to sit tight, scraping by with a dull coastal existence. That is, until the proud Portuguese ships came tearing through the waves. A fiery clash of cultures erupted, reshaping the old world's entire perception of this land.
Sudden silence. Soft wind sounds. Single melancholic violin.
They leisurely fished near the shore, casually burned a little forest for farming, and then just packed up and moved their villages whenever the soil got tired. To them, that giant mountain wasn't some monster blocking the way. They lived in harmony with nature, perfectly content with a nomadic, stress-free life. But a strange wind blew an explorer ship off course, accidentally dragging the fate of an entire subcontinent along with it. Pedro Alvarez Cabral had landed. That pristine, abundant life officially hit a dead end in the fateful year of 1500. Those precious red timber trees immediately caught the foreigner's eyes. Did you know the name Brazil actually comes from this very tree, glowing red like hot coals? Small camps started popping up like weeds. Planting flags and claiming sovereignty was flashy, but Portugal didn't have a grand master plan yet. They were just focused on a quick cash grab through short-term maritime trade. But a juicy piece of meat always attracts predators. Their eternal rival, Spain, was already lurking on the horizon. They hastily traded timber, shipping it back to the motherland to maintain a fragile band-aid piece that hung by a thread. And here comes the plot twist of the century. Spain strikes it rich by finding gold. Suddenly, those red logs were practically worthless. The entire Portuguese royal court started sweating bullets. While Portugal was stuck on the beach playing with wood, their enemies were aggressively marching deep inland, crushing the golden Aztec and Inca empires. The desperation reached a boiling point. Unwilling to just sit around and wait for death, a top-secret mission fueled by the king's ambition was handed down. Watching enemy ships haul gold across the ocean every single day was like rubbing salt in the wound. The emergency order went out, smashed through that wall of rock at all costs. Scrambling for supplies, they gritted their teeth and turned their backs to the ocean. It was time to leave the beach and march straight into the jaws of death. Talk about neighborhood envy. While the Spanish squad was strolling inland like it was a walk in the park, the Portuguese team was swallowing their pride, constantly blocked at every turn. Here's the difference in destiny. The Spanish were practically skipping along gentle, flat mountain trails. Meanwhile, on the Brazilian borders, they had to blindly accept being stuck, totally helpless before the massive Plata basin that seemed impossible to cross. And the bitter pill gets harder to swallow. The river systems here felt like a sick joke. The rivers flowed backward, inland, cruelly pushing these dreamers further and further from the sea. Out of options, they clung to massive plantations. The economy ticked up a bit, but the entire southeast was still trapped in nature's iron cage. Desperate for a lifeline, they swarmed to plant sugarcane, filling up the few rare wide plains they could scrape together. But disaster wouldn't leave them alone. Pirates were prowling offshore, waiting to loot. The king back home couldn't care less, and his loyal subjects were left wrestling with awful, infertile land. Even right at the bustling naval port of Salvador, a narrow swamp suffocated every single road, causing traffic jams that would make you want to rip your hair out. They had to shatter this barrier. Rumors started spreading like wildfire. What kind of epic treasure was nature hiding behind that misty veil? Entering the 17th century, absolute misery had pushed humanity's drive to survive to its absolute limit. At the foot of the mountains, a notorious force began to gather. These were the Bandeirantes, some of the most fierce, wild, and stubborn frontiersmen in history. Catching the scent of the golden land, the magic pull of money awakened a new army, ready to gamble with their very lives. Thousands of them marched in, hauling an insane amount of gear. They gritted their teeth and hurled themselves into the deadly, dense jungle. Throwing on thick, ugly cotton armor, they carried a relentless determination to scale the high cliffs and hunt down that shiny metal that could change their lives forever. Wild beasts lurked in the deep shadows. Ancient, foggy paths were hidden by moss and time. Hidden stone steps appeared and vanished, so incredibly narrow and slippery that one wrong move meant being smashed to pieces. But then, the summit finally appeared, an awe-inspiring view laid out right before their eyes. Not a barren abyss, but an endless, welcoming, flat plateau. And here is the ultimate prize for those unafraid of death. After years of imprisonment, they had finally stepped foot in the promised land. A cool climate, with a massive network of rivers flowing across a lush, fertile plateau. Standing on that peak, looking down, a megacity named São Paulo was just starting to spark into existence. They didn't just break a geographical barrier, they officially shattered the chains of destiny for an entire nation.